Welcome to Linear Fisheries, but more importantly, welcome to the Linear Challenge. Now I have got 72 hours to try and catch a carp out of each of the open access day ticket waters. You've got Brasenose 1, Brasenose 2, Hardwick and Smiths, Oxleys and St John's. So without further ado, let's get the van unloaded and start that clock. My challenge begins on Oxley's Lake, which is a short drive from the rest of the complex, but it's a mega venue and one that I love to fish. I think one of the hardest parts of this challenge is going to be getting the bank six in the ground. So Oxley's is a little over 20 acres and holds well over 1,000 carp. But the beauty with Oxley's is it's very long and it's narrow. So it's sort of a great venue for any angler of any calibre. And what's even better about it is it's flat out on the bottom. There's absolutely nothing out there. So all I've done is I've literally clipped up 80 yards, which is well within my boundary. Had one chuck just to make sure it's nice and clean, which as you can see by that lead, it is. And I'm gonna get the 3 rods clipped up out there. Hopefully it'll be a good start to the Linear Challenge. Always love it when I see people do this. I mean, like they're putting together a rifle, like they're just about to go to war. Bang on that one, all 3 of them have gone out, first chuck. Now as hook baits, I've gone for worms. We're here to fish a challenge. I want to give myself the best possible chance of passing that challenge. So I've got little bits of plastic corn. Again, how I like to tie them on when I'm fishing sort of long distance, because I don't know what the little fish situation is going to be in here, and also because I'm chucking in a crosswind, I've tied them and I've put them on in the most secure way. I've got 3 of them out there now. I'm going to make up a little bit of mix, just put 10 bombs out, and all I can do then is sit back and hope that an Oxley's carp decides to play ball. Not only for this trip have I got to consider myself, but I've also got to consider the cameraman. But what we've done is we have got a pack of biscuits for each lake. Starting off here on Oxley's, we have got the humble cookie. Cookies are nice, aren't they? Maryland. Don't get many in a pack now though, do this. 8 biscuits, that is, £1.79. What's the world coming to? Don't even spill, look, don't even leak. So the first test is the snap test. Nah, not a very good rating, that, quite airy these. Criteria number 2, onto the old dunk test. See what these have got, see if they can hold up. It's always a question, isn't it, of how long do you hold it in? Still got a bit of rigidness to it. See these drinking quite a lot of the brew though. Messy though. Very messy. Well, I think overall, I'm going to have to give the cookie 7 out of 10. I do love biscuits, but I love carp more, and unfortunately, Oxley's was a little too quiet. I've given it a couple of hours now, and it's quite evident that the carp are not here, but the lake is now exceptionally busy, which sort of means that I can't move anywhere on this particular lake, but what it does mean is I've got 4 other options to go and have a look round. So I'm going to give it another half an hour, I'm going to bring them in, gear in the van, and we're going to get on our toes and we're going to have a little look, because Oxley's is also a very good night water, so it's worth having as a backup, whereas if I go to B1 now, there's a good chance of a day bite out of there. So it's one of them, it's always a little bit, if you come up here for a session, you just set up and put the rods out, but when you're here to do a challenge, I'm feeling the pressure. When using worm hook baits, you need to be conscious of other species in the lakes, and up at Linear, all of the lakes have a wide variety present. If you aren't careful, you could end up with no hook bait at all, which is another reason why I like to use the plastic corn in conjunction with them. Even if the other species do nick my worms, I will still have something on the end. Let's get on to the next lake. We've come over the road now, and we're currently stood on Brasenose 1. Now, it's worth mentioning here that we have got 0 privileges. I have rocked up here this morning with Lewis, and we are just going around and fitting in where we can to try and complete this challenge. But something else that's thrown us another curveball is that whilst we're here, throughout the course of the week, certain lakes have got certain peg closures for bookings at different times. So not only have I got to try and catch a carp from the different lakes, I've also got to try and work my time around when the lakes are closing and when they're opening. So yeah, say sort of a double challenge, but I'm having a look out here now. This is the only peg that I can see that's empty. The wind's pushing across, so I'm just going to sort of stand here for 15-20 minutes, see if I see anything, basically, see if there's anything to go by. Tactics wise, to start with, I've just seen a fish show in close. So I'm going to flick a bunch of worms in close, and then much like what we was doing on Dovey and Spooner Versus, I'm going to spot over zigs. So I've seen a couple of fish out in the middle, and with Brasenose one being predominantly night bites on the bottom, day bites on zigs, obviously it's the day. So I want to put zigs out to try and get a quick bite, and I think that's the best way of doing it. But I'm in a rush. The clock is ticking. Good job of saying catch a carp to save your life, because I'll be starving to death at this rate. On this occasion, I decided to keep my sloppy spod mix really simple. I simply added worms and mud to a bucket, chopped them up and added a few handfuls of hemp. I then made the mix sloppy with the addition of some lake water, just enough to make it tacky. I then put out 11 spods and waited to see if there was a reaction. I think one of the things that's going to be the hardest for me here is probably seeing a couple of fish in a more shorter range peg, which I did see on Oxleys and we've also seen around here on B1. But the session angler in me is like, no, we'll go here because this is where they're going to end up. But ultimately I need to get a bite as quick as I possibly can. So we'll see how today pans out. I don't know, maybe I may have made a mistake by not going for them quick bites, which is what we're obviously here to do. Spomming over zigs is absolutely the correct method for this swim on this lake, but unfortunately it wasn't right for what I was trying to achieve. I needed to fish for quick bites and quick bites just weren't coming. I decided to move to the narrow end of the lake where I've seen a few fish showing already. The clock is ticking. We've only got about 3 or 4 hours before dark, and ideally I'd like a bite out of here and then be able to move on to another lake tonight. So I'm rigging a couple of bunches up, I'm gonna wang these out there and see what happens. One thing that I've certainly learnt today is that I should be going with my gut feeling more than what my head is telling me, because both times my gut has told me to go on the end of the wind, and both times my head has overrode that decision and I've set up off of the wind, more central. And I think it's just the mentality that I have. I'm setting up central because I'm looking to create a big hit, but we're not here to create a big hit. I'm here to try and get a bite as quick as I possibly can. On the positive side, since we moved around here, which was all of 5 minutes ago, I've already had an occurrence on the left hander. The sort of stone fell off the spool, the clutch spun a little bit, but what happened there then? There's quite a lot of fish down here, so it could have just been one charging through the line, but it's looking positive that I could tick off B1 before dark, which will mean I can move to another lake. And yeah, it's one step closer to completing the challenge. Well, it looks like the move down here hasn't or isn't going to pay off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it 5 more minutes, bring these in, and I'm going to go back in to the peg where I fished for a couple of hours already, centre part of the lake. They're not showing down here as much as what they were when I got in there, so I'm hoping that tonight I can get a bite to be packed up early in the morning to be moved to another lake, which will probably be Oxley's. Yeah, and I mean by now, I was hoping that I'd have had one from both here and Oxley's, but that isn't the case. But it can change around very quickly. You know, if I catch one out of here tonight, catch one from Oxley's tomorrow day, do a night or the second night on, say, St John's or Hardwick, then I can go on to B2 for that Wednesday period and then do another night on whatever lake I've got left to catch from. So all is not lost. It's just been a rather frustrating day. Back in swim 5, I decided to set my stall out. I wasn't going to be moving in the hours of darkness, so went about it as I would normally approach it. 3 fresh hook baits, all on the same spot with a bucket of bait over the top. I was confident, despite having a tough day. Was I going to get off the mark in the hours of darkness? It's been a long night. I expected something to have happened earlier on, and it must be getting near to morning. In fact, it's not, I would say it's almost not far off a first light. And when I thought all hope was gone, I am in to what I think is a carp. Unless it turns out to be a tench, but I think it's a carp. It's not too far out, so I'm going to focus on getting this in. Hopefully we can tick that first lake off. Unfortunately, no one will get to see the first carp of the linear challenge go over the net due to a cameraman malfunction and the battery dying. However, I will say I am very pleased to finally see a carp in the springbow. Well, there wasn't much playing action to go with that fish because we had a minor technicality, but at just over £27, albeit it took a little longer than what I expected it to, we have ticked the first lake off. Never have I wanted to catch a Brasenose 1 carp quite as much as this one, but like I say, Brasenose 1 is now ticked off. I'm going to get this one back, a couple more hours skip, and I can't wait to get over onto another venue to hopefully tick another one off. Lovely. Brasenose 1, over and out. Well, after the success with that lovely 27-pounder, I jumped back into bed and left the one rod that was remaining out there. And right on first light, which isn't like Brasenose 1, we have got another bite, which means that we're going to double complete the challenge, if that's doable. Well, double complete Brasenose 1 anyway. Different day today though, isn't it? A lot more overcast, wetter. Oh, yes. 2 carp from B1. Well, here he is, a bonus Brasenose 1 common. I'm going to get this one back, put the kettle on, have a brew, get packed up, on to the next venue. Lovely. I'll never take the top one, always gets crushed in transit. See what we got, shall we? Now like the Armageddon a biscuit. Ooh, a very solid snap there with a very even layer. See how they dunk. They go quite tacky when they've been dunked. Let's go for the whole one. Drink the brew this one. For 6 out of 10. They're a little bit sickly these, but at £1.29 they're cheaper than the Marylands and you get more than 8 in a packet. You may have noticed that there's a couple of ways in which I attach worms. Now, it's worth noting that worms are soft skinned, so if you're using any form of nylon, bait floss or braid and you go to pull it tight, you'll just pull through the worms and you won't be able to hold them on your rig. Now, the 2 ways in which I do it, the first way is with a rubber band. These are normally the small or micro bands that match anglers would use, and I simply loop to loop one of those on the back of a micro hook ring swivel and put a bit of plastic corn over it to eventually lock them in place. And what I do is open up the band and sort of feed the worms in, so you're not chopping them, you're leaving them whole, but then when you're pulling the piece of plastic corn down, you're locking the band off tight and the worms can't wriggle out of the band. Now, this is a really, really good way of fishing worms if you're fishing anywhere up to around 80 to 90 yards. The other way in which I do it is I use marker elastic as opposed to bait floss to attach them. And I simply concertina 1 worm down each side of the pole elastic, tie a series of overhand loops. And what this does is it ties the worms in a nice tight ball. I've still got the attraction of a worm hook bait, but it means I can cast it at distance without the fear of them falling off. Well, as you can see, I've packed up from Brasenose and I'm back over on Oxleys, but I've had a drive around this morning and there is 2 pegs that are empty, but one of the pegs that's empty is peg 13, which is a swim that controls a little bit of the island. Even though the wind swung, islands on any lake always hold carp. So what I'm hoping, or what I would like to achieve today, is to get Oxley's boxed off, then go over onto Hardwick to do a night on there before going over onto Brasenose 2 at 2 o'clock tomorrow to try and nick one out of there, and then on to the third and final night to hopefully complete the challenge. Back on Oxley's, I wasn't going to make the same mistake. Plan of attack this time was to throw 3 fresh bunches of worms out and leave it at just that. No bait at all. I needed a quick bite, and that's exactly what I got. Well, as you can see, I am bent in to an Oxley's carp. It has taken all of 10 minutes to get a bite. And a bit like last night, playing one out of B1, the old nerves were getting to me a little bit. Concentrate on getting this one. This was on the short rod. Basically what I'd done is I was looking for little patches of bubbles, and every time I see a patch of bubbles I just flicked 2-ounce lead with the rig over the top, and a classic bite, little drop back, bang, up to the top, off it goes, and we are in. Hopefully I can get it in, and I say hopefully because you just never know, but hopefully I can get it in and we can move on in double quick time. This is just what I need. In the back of that tree. What is the chances of that? I don't believe it. For sake. I doubt we'll get this in. But no, it's in there. Whenever you wade into a lake, always make sure you do it safely. The bottom of the lake can change quickly, and 1 minute you can be safe and sound on firm ground, and the next step you can be thigh deep in silt and under. If possible, always have a spotter. Can silt here. Easy as we go now. Come on, let's have Oxley's ticked off the old list. In and out, in and out. Nice fish too. Go on. Yes! We don't like that many dramas, but we've got Oxley's ticked off. Yes! How quick was that? The crank's never coming out, boy. Well, that right there is Oxley's well and truly ticked off the list. A little over 20 pound of lovely mirror carp. I should have been holding a fish up from here yesterday, but I made the wrong choice, but I didn't make the same mistake twice. So that one is Oxley's complete. I'm gonna put this one back, pack the gear away, I'm gonna go over and have a little look at Hardwick. Lovely times. I fish linear for a very long time now, and in that time I've caught not only a lot of carp, but I've caught a lot of big carp, and in amongst them big carp are always the standouts from each lake that a lot of people travel to linear each year to go and fish for. Now, some standout ones, first and foremost, has to be my very first 40 off the linear complex. It's become a bit of a standing joke between me and a few friends that I've caught so many fish off of the complex, why haven't I had a 40 pounder? And obviously as years go by, the fish grow and there's a lot more 40 pounders in there now than what there was when I first started fishing there, but it always avoided me. So my very first 40, which was out of manner, after resisting the temptation to put zigs out, which I knew would get me more bites, but ultimately fishing on the bottom is what's going to catch me a big one, and it has. And since that day, I've gone on to catch, I think roughly around 34 to 36 40s off that complex. Another standout would have to be the box common, not only because it's one of the most recognised carp on the linear complex, but because I caught it when my little girl was there, so I managed to share the moment with her. And then I think, even though it's the biggest off the complex, it's the big one out of Brasenose 1, which to a lot of people it's like, oh, it's a 50 pounder out of Brasenose 1, it's Brasenose 1. To me, to catch that fish, I've not only had to wade for a lot of carp, but for the amount of carp that I've caught at that complex and from that lake, I've never actually caught that fish at any lower weight. So for that fish to have avoided me, and then for me to have caught that fish, is a real sort of standout moment. You know, not only is it a 50 pounder, which is a massive carp, but it's a day ticket 50 as well. Hardwick and Smiths is one of the oldest lakes on the complex. Now, it used to be 2 lakes, but it has since been joined by a small channel in the middle, Hardwick being the bigger side, Smiths being the smaller side. Undoubtedly, this is the lake with the most amount of features. You've got real high bars, you've got really deep clay areas, you've got a lot of weed, crystal clear water, but again, like all the waters here, you've got a really, really good head of fish. But one thing that can throw, certainly me, and it also does a lot of anglers as well, is that fish are either in Hardwick or they're in Smiths, and they're normally in either or in big numbers. So I've just had a little look in this peg here now. The water is crystal clear, but I reckon if I go over and have a little look in Smiths, the water will be murky over there, because my gut feeling, so to speak, is the fish are in the Smith side, because a few of the anglers that we've already spoken to on the Hardwick side have only had the odd bite, which is quite rare for this place. It normally fishes pretty well, certainly in the central pegs. So I'm going to have a little look here, because I can have a real good look right the way down Hardwick. I'm going to have a little look in Smiths, and again, just see what happens. Another lake that's really busy, but it all adds to the challenge. My gut was right again. After all, it was full of biscuits. Smiths was the side to go. Well, after a long barrow walk, I am now in the peg. A little fun fact, I've never actually caught a carp out of the Smith side of Hardwick and Smiths. So if I do manage to catch one on this challenge, it's going to be my first carp I've ever caught from this side of the lake. Not that they're not the same carp that live in Hardwick, but I've still never fished this side. Like I said before, one thing with Hardwick and Smiths, it's a lot more up and down than all the other lakes. So it does take a little bit of leading work just to find sort of the right area. The areas that I'm looking for are the shallower areas, or the shallowest areas as possible, should I say. There's a lot of bars, there's a lot of ups and downs, and if you have a little look at sort of the topography map that's been done of this lake, just off the side of where I'm fishing drops down to over 20 feet. Where I'm actually fishing is on top of a bar in 10 feet, but again, being really, really precise about where they've got to land. Like an Oxleys, B1, you clip up to a distance, you just fish as and where you want. On here, it does take a little bit of extra time, but let me tell you, if you're going to make a few chucks, you might as well make loads of chucks and be 100% positive of where you're going to be fishing, because there's nothing worse than putting them rods out and then thinking, if I'd have spent a few more minutes looking for the right spot, I could have been fishing somewhere completely different and probably had a chance of getting a bite. So I've had a good lead around, I'm happy with the spot that I found, 2 rods on it, 2 rigs over the top, 10 spoms of bait, sit back, chill out. My mixes on all of the linear lakes stay pretty consistent and is made up of very simple components. First part is worm, which gets extremely chopped up, a tin of the yellow stuff, some freshly cooked hemp, pellets and crushed boilies. Each mix I make up fresh every time I want to spot, because chopped worm fresh is amazing at attracting carp, but if left too long, it can act as a repellent. I can't stress enough that it isn't about huge quantities of bait on this complex. A few very accurate spods is much better than 10 kilos spread all over the swim. I use an empty tin of corn as a measure to make up my mixes, so each is as consistent as the last. Taking what I had learnt on Oxleys, with 2 rods sitting on bait, I decided to put the 3rd rod out with a yellow single pop-up and cast it down my left-hand margin. If it's not in the water, it can't catch you a fish. Well, a few hours have gone by now. Nothing's happened, but to be honest with you, I have leaded it quite a lot, so I don't expect anything to happen instantly. But what I said at the start before we sort of got the rods out was the difference in colours of water. Hardwick is literally just behind and it is like tap clear. You look in here, you can't even test your pop-ups in the margins. It's that murky. So it's quite evident that there's a lot of carp this side. It can only be them that's made the water this colour. I've got a feeling we're probably going to end up doing tonight on here because we've got a lot of rain forecast within the next couple of hours. But I'm remaining optimistic. If something happens within the next couple of hours, we'll be packed up and on to St John's. But I think as it stands now, I'm going to leave them out there till they go, or till this evening at least, redo them ready for the night. I reckon by morning we'll be packing up and on the move. Bang on when the weather app said, the heavens opened and we had an hour or so of torrential rain and downpours. The second the rain stopped though, my black and white bobbin hit the blank and the alarm came to life. We have just gone through the most monumental rainstorm ever, and I was looking out thinking I haven't actually seen anything for a while, and then my rod that is short down to the left, the one that I put out in just a plain yellow pop-up, has just absolutely ripped off, and I've just seen it, in to a carp. A little bit of a situation here because my rods are low. I set them up a bit silly really. If I can get rid of them over there, gives me a bit of space then to land it, hopefully. Because we could be going into the evening having ticked Hardwick off, which would be rather nice. Another thing with Hardwick, the carp in here are lovely as well. Real selection in here, we've got a lot of lovely scaly fish. There it is. 7 wraps, probably the closest carp I've ever caught being on from linear. He's a nice one. One of the ones you fish Hardwick for. So that now is effectively a carp from Brasenose, a carp from Oxley's and a carp from Hardwick on the Smith side, all in the same day, because I never caught one until 4 o'clock this morning. 2 to go. Unfortunately, due to the time of day, the fishery gates were now shut and I couldn't get over the road to St John's. And due to late bookings, I wasn't able to get onto B2, so I was going to have to stay the night on Hardwick and Smiths and make up for lost time the following day. Just under 21. There we go, Hardwick Lake and Smiths Pool now ticked off the list. It's a shame really that this fish didn't come an hour or so ago because I would have had time to pack up and move, but there's loads of rain sort of loitering around. It's not far off of being dark, so I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to slip this one back, hopefully enjoy a little bit of fishing on the Smith side tonight before making another early pack up and heading over to St John's. So there we are, 3 out of 5 complete, 2 to go. Since joining Korda, I've had the same set of 12'6", 4-pound test curve Kaizen greens. Now, I'm in a very fortunate position where I could ring up Korda and I could order any set of the rods, whether that be another set of greens or go to the very top end and get myself a set of platinums. All of the videos that I've done, you will see that I use the same set of rods, and I've actually just replaced them like for another set of 12'6", 4-pound greens. I fish not only at home, on small lakes, big lakes where I'm spotting sort of 110, 120s and fishing at distance, but also going abroad and fishing at extreme distance, certainly at places like Zajarki out in Croatia. And the greens, I've never been in a situation, should I say, where they haven't been able to do what I want that rod to do. Now, a lot of people say 4-pound test curve rod, that's really beefy, you know, it's going to pull hooks out of fish's mouths. Absolutely not, you know, they are a really balanced, lovely rod to use. They're very minimal to look at, which again is something that I really like. They've got plenty of backbone if I want to chuck a lead. They've also got plenty of backbone if a fish goes into weed and I need to get that fish away from the weed. And they've also got a lovely tip for playing them at the same time. And I'm not playing fish thinking as soon as this fish bolts under the tip, because it's stiff, it's going to pull the hook out. That's simply not the case. For me, I can't stress enough to people just how nice these rods are. A lot of people think, well, you're just saying that because you're getting paid to say that. Absolutely not. When I'm using the greens, I know that they're going to do what I want them to do. You know, if I want to put a solid bag on them and give it the big one, I know they're going to perform. And if I want to flick a rod underarm, and when that fish is ripping off, if I pick the rod up, I know I'm not just going to rip the hook out of its mouth. You know, they are a lovely, balanced, all-round rod that I can see me using for many years to come. That's a big deck of biscuit. The biscuit choice for Hardwick and Smiths is the coconut rings. Can't say I've ever had many of these, but these have been supplied by Lewis, the cameraman. So we're going to wait for the kettle to boil, make a coffee, do the snap test, do the taste test, and give it the overall. Not really going to be a fan of these, I don't think, already, but you never know. Once we open the packet, I'll be able to let you know more. Oh no. Don't know about these. Smell cheap, Lewis. Mate, a gust of wind would have blown that in half. Not much substance to these. Not very nice dry. Not holding out much for the dip, I've got to be honest. To be honest, they're not bad at dunking. I have to dunk a full one in, I think. I think the way to dunk these, you have to back them. Sandwich them, but with no filling. Back to back. Have a look. You know what? I think overall, packet size, you get a lot. £1.25. Far more than what we've had in the other two packets anyway. Initially, not ideal. When you double them up and you dunk them, I like them. I'm going to rate these a 7 out of 10. And not only that as well, means I'm starting my day with one of my 5 a day. It's a win-win really. With my morning brew and biscuits polished off, it was time to fill up the carp porter and get on our toes. I now had roughly 24 hours to finish the challenge, and I still had B2 and St John's to tick off. B2 I was confident with, but was being held up by not being able to get onto the lake until after midday. But St John's was going to be a real challenge.
Oh, this is a nice barra.
There wasn't even a swim available at this point, so I headed over and waited on B2. Fortunately, after waiting for a swim to open up, I did spot a few fish topping. The fish I had seen was situated out in front of peg 19. The plan was simple: another 3 fresh bunches of worms out, a bucket of bait to hopefully spark the B2 carp into feeding, and then to sit back and rate the biscuit of B2. We haven't brought any brew kit around here because we are travelling light and we want to be as mobile as we possibly can be. But we've got here the Humble Chocolate Digestive. Now, even before I open the packet of these are without a doubt one of my favourite dunking biscuits. But one of the questions that I want to know from you guys and girls is, what is your favourite biscuit to have on the bank? Drop it down in the comments below. Bit dry though without a brew, aren't they? Ooh. Nice crunchy snap. Irrespective of a coffee or not. They're just a good solid snack, aren't they? Well, they are 185, but what you've got to consider, what these have got that the others haven't had. Granted, the Foxes had a bit of filling, but these are coated in chocolate, which anyone that knows me knows that I love chocolate. So yeah, these have got a nice chocolate coating on top. And the beauty of these is if you're dunking, to stop your fingers from getting messy, you double them up like so. You've got 2 clean sides there for your finger. Give that a good dunk, drink your brew, but it tastes bloody lovely. Now I'd have to rate these fairly high, purely because if I was going shopping, these would be my first port of call. 9 out of 10. Well, it seemed like the crack of the old digestive has worked. Rod over the baited area has just dropped back, and I'm into a Brasenose 2 carp. And the nerves are getting to me now. I keep saying I'm not nervous, but in reality, The man behind the camera, Lewis, is probably applying more pressure on me than anything else. But we're in. And it just shows I've only baited up on that spot probably 10 minutes ago. So again, much like the Oxleys, or the fish that we caught out of Oxleys, if you're on them, it can go very, very quickly. Now all I've got to do is hope it goes in the net. Right, it looks like he's on the surface. Is he gonna complete the Brasenose 2? Whew. Pressure mounting, pressure off. 4 down, 1 to go, 1 night to complete the challenge. Fat bay. Oh, he's over. 30 1/4. Come on. Oh. Well, here he is then, 30 pound and 4 ounces of Brasenose 2 mirror carp. Now, he might not win any awards at a beauty pageant, but I'll tell you what, he might help me complete the challenge. Lake 4 of 5 complete. Now it's a mad pack up from here, go down the shops, get some fresh supplies, and we're gonna spend the last night on St John's. 80% of the way there. Come on, don't be a I'm trying to fish a challenge here. St John's was always going to be the hardest part of this challenge. You know, as soon as you mention the name Linear Fisheries, St John's is the first name of a lake that people mention. It is undoubtedly the most famous lake on the complex. I think made even more famous by the underwater that was shot on here many moons ago. I haven't actually settled anywhere in particular. I've got a swim, which is where I am now, which is a peg known as the Dugout. I actually tried to get on here yesterday, but it was so busy that I was unable to get any peg. Every single peg was taken. Whereas today a couple have become available and I'm now in here. Is it where I would want to be? Probably not, but with it being so busy and not having any privileges, this is probably the best of what I'm going to have with what's left. But what I don't want to do is commit to setting up and then almost becoming a little bit lazy and not wanting to move. So we've got a peg secure. I can have a good look at the lake from where I am. If I see fish show elsewhere, then I maybe look to move, and that'll then be 5 out of 5, challenge complete. From where I was sat, although I couldn't see any carp, I could definitely see the rain rolling in. But what was promising was seeing multiple swims up the far end becoming vacant. So I decided to walk through the rain and have a look. Just after the rain passed and the sun broke through, I saw what I'd been searching for, carp. That was all I needed to see to get me on the move. So we've now set up the far end of St John's, come for a little walk round, albeit in the mother of all downpours, and to my surprise, a lot of the anglers that were up here earlier on have actually all gone. I reckon they probably got away before that rain came down, but the wind has gone ever so slight northwest, and whether a few fish have followed it up or not, I don't know, or there was just fish already up this end. Now this end is primarily known as the shallow end, but it is still about 7 to 9 feet. So in relation to a lot of other lakes, it isn't actually that shallow. Probably seen now 20 fish show up here. Now, even though the lads that we'd spoke to had seen fish down the other end, I'm the only angler that's actually fishing anywhere near these fish. Whereas the fish that are shown down the opposite end of the lake, you're sort of sharing them with about 12 or 14 other anglers, all with 3 rods out each. So I'm sort of going on the hunch that the probability of me getting a bite up here may be greater than what it is down that bottom end. Although I was confident down the bottom end, confidence is higher up here. And if it doesn't happen up here, then I'll be forever kicking myself thinking I should have stayed down there. But it is what it is. We've moved up here, we're soaking wet, we've seen fish, rods are getting ready. Let's do it. The rig I've been using on this session is one I would pretty much take everywhere, and it very rarely, if ever, changes. It's made up of 12 inches of 20-pound IQ2 and the hook is a size 4 crank X, my absolute favourite since joining Korda. The only thing that changes is how I attach my worms, which I explained earlier, depending on how far I cast. As I was preparing the other rods, the fish didn't stop showing. In amongst them all, one decided to pick up my spinner rig. Well, would you believe it? I am in to a St. John's, what I think is a carp. I literally flicked a single out onto where these fish have been showing. And I don't know why, but all of the bites I've had this week have all been dropbacks. That one there was a savage dropback, and I'm in. I could complete it in well under the time limit here, but you never know. There's always time for something to go wrong. As the saying goes, never count your chickens before they hatch. As the fight developed, I came to realise I wasn't attached to a St. John's carp, but more than likely one of the resident catfish, and it was tearing me all over the swim. There really isn't a lot you can do in these situations other than hit, hold and hope. Luckily, it just fell off. Catfish that. Yeah. Do you want to see the slime? Catfish. 100% catfish. That's good. Don't want to be catching them. Horrible things. It wouldn't have meant I passed the challenge anyway, would it? So the good thing is it hook pulled and didn't snap me off, so it's not trailing. It's just got a sore lip. The show stopped and left me to properly find a spot and deploy a bucket of bait and 3 rigs out, but with no naturals. This was to avoid the catfish. Was that my chance ruined? Only time would tell. It was a rather disappointing night. Not on the sleep front, had a very good night's sleep. I stayed awake for a couple of hours and I was hearing them show out here and I was just thinking, surely it's a matter of time until one goes. And here I am at 6:45 in the morning and the bobbins are still in the same place, which is slightly frustrating because I was on them. Certainly I was on enough fish, but it just shows, doesn't it? You know, it doesn't matter how well you know a venue, how many carp are in a venue. If you do everything right and they don't want it, you're not going to catch. But unfortunately, the time is slipping away. The only thing that I'm sort of thinking may happen now is as this sun comes up, this is the shallower end. If the fish are still down here, they might become active a little bit quicker. The rods are out there, I've got no need to redo them. You know, they're all out there with pop-ups on. There's no worms on them, so there's no fear of them being taken off. The bait went out bang on. No excuses really, you know, everything was done right. But I mean, as we all know as anglers, sometimes it just doesn't happen. No matter what you do, it just doesn't happen. I was certainly on fish, but there is still time. So we're gonna have a coffee, adjust my eyes to the world, and hopefully, just hopefully, I can get a St. John's carp. There is one other more important question that needs answering, along with will I catch from St. John's, and that is, what is the biscuit of the lake? Well, the biscuit of choice for St. John's is a shortbread, which I've got to be honest, straight away is my worst biscuit ever. They don't ever really look inviting, do they? The problem is when you eat them, they end up like sticking all around here in your mouth and you have to go like, to get it out, don't you? So, not holding out much hope for these. But I think they're quite fitting with St. John's because St. John's is one of the oldest lakes on the complex, and to be fair, I always sort of wrongly or rightly put shortbread down as more of an older generation biscuit, aren't they? But anyway, let's try it. Let's snap one first, see if we've got a nice solid snap. They're a lot thinner than what, oh, there's a fish just showed. They're a lot thinner than what I remember them being. Nah. Very light on the bake. Dip it into a cup of tea. I'm not actually getting out of bed for this one. Yeah. Been a bit like the fishing so far. Non-existent. No. Normally I could eat a whole pack of any biscuits, but I don't think I'd get through many of them. Going to be the lowest rating possible, Lewis. Lewis is shaking his head, but he's more old school than me. 4 out of 10. I just don't like them. Lewis says, no, you can't shake your head at me and be angry at me. It's my decision, personal. Nothing against shortbread. Obviously, they probably are the nation's favourite. But for me, these are only ever really sent as a Christmas present, aren't they, when you don't know what else to buy anyone. 4 out of 10. Good value for money, though. We finished on my least favourite biscuit, and what's even worse, no carp. Sitting on St John's, the timer was running out very, very fast, and I always knew it was going to be a bit of a challenge, and I did fail it, you know, and I'm not ashamed to say that I failed it. And there's probably going to be people that are going to watch this video and be like, oh, you should have easily passed that, it was a given. Or there's hopefully people from watching this video that are going to go there and try and set themselves a challenge to try and do what I couldn't do. But what it does mean, and what it does show to people, is that I am human. You're not just turning up there, catching 10, 15 fish in 5 minutes from these lakes like people think you are. You have got to work these places out, you know, they're very busy. Carp are governed a lot by the pressure, and one mistake or one sort of tactic that you wish you'd have tried but you didn't have time to try, that could have been a difference between me failing it and passing it. But the good thing is, provided the lads at Korda let me do it, it gives us a good reason to go back and have another go.